be seated. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a good evening last night. Just so you know, we will begin with the presentation of evidence shortly. However, there is one housekeeping issue that I need to address with you. As you'll recall, when we were seating the jury, we provided you with names of witnesses to confirm whether you did know any of those witnesses. There's one additional witness that I need to confirm whether any of you has knowledge of. If you do, please raise your hand. This man's name is Leland Damner, D-A-M-N-E-R. Does anyone know Mr. Damner? Seeing no hands, we will continue with the presentation of evidence. Ms. Dahl, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. The state calls Trooper Roadcap to the stand. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
Or maybe it was for Dana.
Please come forward and be sworn in by the clerk.
Hello. Can you please state and spell your first and your last name?
Sean, S-E-A, Roadcap, R-O-D-C-A-B.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Hello.
That bar in front of you is a microphone. I just want to make sure that you position it such that it captures your voice so the jury can hear you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Trooper. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hello, my name is Trooper Sean Roadcap with the Arizona Department of Public Safety.
What do you, how long have you been with the Arizona Department of Public Safety?
Approximately 11 and a half years.
And were you working on the night of October 8th of 2014 at approximately 3 a.m.?
Yes, I was.
And at that time, did you respond to the area of the Knights Inn in Phoenix, Arizona?
Yes, I did.
Were you riding alone or were you riding with a partner?
I was riding alone.
Tell us where you were coming from and what you saw and did.
I was coming from our office at Encompass Plaza. At the time, I was typing an offense report when I heard over the radio Charles 326, who is Trooper Cruz, put out over the air that shots had been fired and that an officer was down. I ran out of the office into my patrol vehicle and made my way to the scene. I came down the McDowell off-ramp, wrong way to the scene, parked my vehicle behind Troopers Cruz and Alfano, and exited my vehicle. Ran up to the scene. Trooper Casey was laying on his back.
Let me stop you. What were you driving? Was it an SUV or a car, sedan?
It was an SUV, a Ford Explorer.
Okay. Did you have anything in your hands when you ran up and got out of the car or the SUV?
No.
Okay. So tell us, you ran up to Trooper Casey?
Ran up to Trooper Casey. Troopers Cruz and Alfano were tending to Trooper Casey. I just started talking to Trooper Casey, trying to keep him alert, conscious. Looking at his face, I could just see a large wound below his left eye. He was bleeding profusely.
Was he engaged with you?
Somewhat. I mean, as best he could. I was trying to ask him questions just to keep his attention, trying to keep him awake, that kind of stuff.
At some point, did you shift your attention to a different duty on that scene?
Yes, I stayed with Trooper Casey until Phoenix Fire arrived on scene. Once they arrived on scene and took over with the medical care, I went back to my vehicle and began to secure the scene with evidence tape.
Did you also grab your rifle?
Once I was done with the evidence tape, or I'm sorry, the police tape to make the perimeter, I returned back to my vehicle. I did grab my patrol rifle just in case the vehicle had come back. We didn't know where the vehicle had gone or if it was going to return.
Where did you go with your rifle?
I just stood along the frontage road by my vehicle or the sidewalk area.
Were there other officers that were responding that were standing in a perimeter-like area, not knowing if the vehicle was going to come back a third time?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as exhibit number 74. Where was Trooper Casey when you arrived on scene?
He was behind one of the patrol vehicles, one of the two patrol vehicles that are parked in front of the single SUV.
And where did you go and stand? Out with your rifle?
What's that? With my rifle?
Yes.
To the left, over there where the curb is.
Could you show us by hitting the top right button and circling on your touch screen in front of you, sir?
I believe it was in this area.
Were there multiple responding units that you hit clear?
Yes, there was multiple units responding.
About how many Phoenix Police Department and DPS officers were responding?
I'd say at least 8 to 10 that I knew of, probably more.
And that was in the few minutes following the 998 radio call?
Yes. That came out over the air.
If I may have one moment.
You may.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz?
I have no questions for Trooper Roadcat.
Thank you. Counsel, please approach. All right, Trooper, when there are questions asked by the jury in Arizona, the judge asks them. The question for you is, you said when you arrived, Cruz was in front of the lone SUV. After you arrived, did the car return? I would assume that to be the Sable.
No, while I was there, the Sable was already, it never returned. It was already gone.
Thank you. Follow up from Ms. Dahl.
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 114, sir. You mentioned that Trooper Casey was on the ground. Was he on the ground next to, and I'm going to point for the record in 114, as we look at the image, the SUV on the left from DPS, or was he over by the flashlight?
I believe he was back. They had already moved him back to the SUV when I got there.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Lorenz, any follow-up?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Trooper Roadcat. I know you showed up and you kind of secured the perimeter. You got your rifle. Did you do anything else?
Besides securing the perimeter and just standing there with my rifle? No, just standing perimeter in case anything else happened.
And then I believe you just testified that Trooper Casey, you believe, had been moved from where he had fallen to where they dragged him for safety. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Judge.
All right. We do have an additional juror question. Trooper, an additional question. Did the police tape encompass the frontage road to the east?
Yes, to the east to where the wall or that divides the off-ramp and the main line of the freeway is. You have the frontage road, and then you have the cement barrier wall that's over there that divides the frontage road and the freeway.
And the police tape encompassed the frontage road? In other words, blocked it?
I believe it did. I would have to look at pictures or whatever to refresh my memory, but as far as I remember, I believe we blocked off the frontage road because there were vehicles, police vehicles and everything else parked over there as well. So I know it wasn't open to traffic or anything like that.
Did you place the tape across the frontage road?
I believe so.
Any follow-up from the state?
No.
Mr. Lorenz?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Seeing no additional juror questions, that does conclude your testimony. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. Before we continue with the next witness, and you may be excused. Before we continue with the next witness, I have received a number of additional juror questions this morning. I want to remind the jurors that if you have any questions for any witness, the time to ask those questions is while the witness is on the stand. Once the witness leaves the stand, witnesses will not be recalled for the purpose of answering juror questions. It is possible in any given case that a witness may be recalled for other reasons by a party, and if at that point the jurors have questions for that witness, you could ask them at that time, but the witness will not be recalled for the purpose of answering your questions. Witnesses come here, and we don't want to inconvenience them by bringing them back multiple times. If we could consolidate all of those questions into a single time when they are here. So with that, Ms. Dahl, would you like to call your next witness?
The state calls Detective Clint Davis to the stand, Your Honor.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Dahl.
Thank you. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
My name is Clint Davis. I'm a retired Phoenix police detective.
You're an expert in the area of criminal street gangs and specifically the Arizona Mexican Mafia. Is that right, sir?
I am.
Before we talk about that, let's talk about your educational background. Could you share that with us and your training and experience?
I first became exposed to criminal street gangs and law enforcement in San Diego County in the late 80s, working for the Sheriff's Department. And then in January of '89, I was hired by the Phoenix Police Department, went through another academy, and received minimal training on criminal street gangs in the academy. And then I was eventually assigned to the Maryvale precinct, which is on the west side. And in the late 80s, early 90s, there was extremely active criminal street gang activity. So I had more exposure.
I know that you have a lot of experience, but I'm going to slow it down a little bit.
Okay.
You jumped from, what did you do at the Sheriff's Office in California?
I was a deputy sheriff, at that time in California, the law enforcement and detention were all sworn officers. So I worked primarily jails initially and minor patrol.
So when you were working the jail system there, were you exposed to criminal street gang members?
I was.
And did you have training, obviously in that area, going back to the 80s in California?
I did, yes.
And then you said you came here and you went through another academy. What does it mean to go through an academy for the Phoenix Police Department?
It was about the same. The San Diego County Academy was approximately 18 weeks, and I believe the Phoenix Regional Academy was also 16 to 18 weeks of training in patrol techniques, first responder training, first aid, and as I said, minimal training on criminal street gangs as well.
And then you jumped straight to Maryville, but so I don't want to jump there. I want to talk about, you started as a patrol officer, right?
I did. I was, after my post-academy training, I was assigned to Maryville, and I was a patrol officer for approximately a year and a half, multiple contacts with criminal street gang members, and investigations at the street patrol level pertaining to criminal activities involving criminal street gang members as well.
Would encounters with those gang members be consensual?
Many were
Or talking freely to each other, not to use cop talk?
all types of contacts, consensual, casual contacts. There would be interviews, there would be interrogations, depending on the situation surrounding that contact.
Well, let's talk about Maryville. Where is the Maryville district for the Phoenix Police Department geographically?
Well, at that time, it was basically Black Canyon Freeway, west all the way to 120th Avenue, And then it went up to north to the border of Glendale and east of 43rd Street, a little bit further north, and all the way down to an area called Southside 35th Avenue, which is that baseline area. So it was a very large area for patrol.
Can that be a challenging area of the city to patrol based upon high crime activity? And is it known for that?
Absolutely, and it was in the late 80s and early 90s, the criminal street gang wars were very active. Rival criminal street gangs were shooting each other up all the time.
Has that been referenced frequently when talking about the history in Arizona of criminal street gangs, those types of wars, as you refer to them, or rivalries between criminal street gangs that led to high amounts of homicide statistics?
Homicides and other violent crime, yes.
Let's now turn to that year, following that year and a half on patrol in Maryville. What did you do then, sir?
Even while on patrol, I was assigned during the summer months to what was called Operation Safe Streets. And at that time, Phoenix, it was so active, the criminal street gangs were so active, that Phoenix came up with a program to sort of combat and sort of maintain some type of control in the summer months when the younger population was out of high school, which made up a lot of the criminal street gang membership. So it was basically to suppress gang crime and to gather intel on criminal street gangs.
Did the Phoenix Police Department do something proactively to address this high crime rate among criminal street gangs back in the very early 90s?
They did. They came up with, they decided that they wanted to enhance criminal street gang enforcement unit and start it under the auspices of organized crime. So they actually tested for a unit in the early 90s, and I was lucky enough to be one of those individuals accepted on the first gang enforcement unit with Phoenix.
What does it mean to be tested within the Phoenix Police Department? Was there objective criteria and subjective criteria where people applied for that position?
Absolutely, it was a process. They looked for individuals who were obviously interested in working criminal street gangs, that had significant knowledge already, and that really wanted to learn and further that type of unit's objective by suppressing criminal street gang crime.
So essentially, was that the first gang unit that the Phoenix Police Department had?
They had a gang unit before attached to the School Resource Bureau, but It was a little bit different.
And that was 2 people on the west side, right?
Well, yeah, it was a different, sort of a different deal.
And you tested number 1 out of all of those applicants, correct?
I did.
And at that time then, what was that unit's or that bureau's responsibilities? And at that point, did you become a detective?
You actually had to be a detective, so part of the process was self-initiating your detective certification, so that when you went to that unit, you went running, you were ready to go. So you had detective certification and then continuing training, both in tactics and in investigative areas pertaining to criminal street gangs.
What year was that?
That was 93.
Tell us about your training and experience with criminal street gangs, specifically focused on the Arizona Mexican Mafia from 1993 on, sir.
Well, there was pretty much continuing training, and all of the detectives were very open-minded to new techniques, other agencies, even out of state. So we went to training, California Gang Investigators Association put on annual training. They brought in people from all over the country, from very more densely populated cities that had gang problems. And they presented ideas about collecting intel, about doing investigations. All of those were coming from different, every city is different. Every city has different needs. So that was one of the training. And then the federal law enforcement, they put on training. They actually provided Department of Justice statistics to gang detectives that you could access and sort of get an idea of what was happening in Phoenix, what was happening in LA or Detroit or Chicago.
What were some of the investigations that you were part of in the 90s as it related to criminal street gangs and the Arizona Mexican Mafia?
Well, specific to Arizona Mexican Mafia, my first major investigation was in April of approximately 1998. And that was investigating one of the things that the Mafia tends to do a lot. They smuggling illegal drugs into a jail facility to support the population in there and make a lot of money, because inside those drugs are worth 5 to 8 times what they are on the street.
Were you part of one of the first wiretaps involving the Arizona Mexican Mafia in Arizona?
In 98, also into 99, joined with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Violent Criminal Street Gang Task Force, and was an affiant on one of the wires that were initiated in 99 through the first part of the year 2000. And that was actually monitoring and listening and identifying criminal activity directly committed by members in a criminal support structure of the Arizona Mexican Mafia.
What does it mean to be an affiant on a wiretap investigation?
That means gathering the information and writing the information to present in affidavit form to a judge, and supporting probable cause to initiate a wiretap.
Have you listened to hundreds of phone calls?
Thousands.
Thousands of phone calls involving criminal street gang members, and generally it's the Mexican Mafia investigations you're a part of, correct?
Correct.
What about other investigations that you've been the case agent on?
As we did investigations on the Arizona Mexican Mafia, which was primarily a Arizona Department of Corrections based entity, we would do an investigation. They would learn from our investigations.
Who's they?
The Mafia, and they would change their method of operation based on how we were looking at them. So it was, we always had to come up with new ways to sort of identify individuals involved in criminal activity and identify and document those activities that would help us utilize the statutes available to us in Arizona revised statutes.
And you know that for a fact because you've listened to phone calls after investigations where they talk about, well, they got us good in this technique, we should try this. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Have you responded to violent crimes involving felony offenses related to the Mexican Mafia?
Yes, I have. In fact, the Mafia's code of conduct demands that they spill blood for the organization.
And we'll talk about that in a minute regarding the code of conduct, but have you been an investigator or been called in as an investigator on investigations involving felony offenses committed by Mexican Mafia members?
Yes, I have.
Have you testified and been recognized in court as an expert in the area of criminal street gangs and the Mexican Mafia?
I have, both in Maricopa County Superior Court, Pinal County Superior Court, and the United States District Court of Arizona.
Do you teach in your area of expertise?
Yes.
Tell us about your teaching experience.
I started teaching at the police academy so that new officer recruits coming into a new profession could learn more about criminal street gangs and eventually the Arizona Mexican Mafia, which is a security threat group. And then I started teaching for different law enforcement agencies around the state, federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, Drug Enforcement Agency, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and also at the Arizona Gang Investigators Association, which, like California, they started putting on annual training sessions where individuals from around the country could come together to share ideas about criminal street gang and combating gang crimes. And then private organizations and Maricopa County Attorney's Office, the Arizona State Bar, the NFL National Security Council requested that information and a presentation on criminal street gangs.
What about court staff?
Your Honor, may we approach?
You may.
You know, I jumped straight to your teaching and we didn't finish your career. So you teach a lot.
I do,
You teach court staff also, right?
yes,
And a whole bunch of other organizations.
I do.
And you've taught as recently as October 25th to groups of law enforcement officers statewide, correct?
I have.
Okay. Let's now talk about your career. I got squirreled off there on the teaching. Tell us what you did following your tenure in the gang unit at the Phoenix Police Department.
Well, moved around after the assignment to the Federal Bureau of Investigations gang unit. That came back, actually went back out on the street, enforcement level, contacting individuals on criminal activity out on the street. And then in 2005 approximately, we were assigned to the Arizona Department of Public Safety, a conspiracy unit that focused primarily on the Arizona Mexican Mafia and its impact both in jails, prisons, and on the street.
What did you do after that time in 2005?
Started different investigations. One was reference fraud, and it was called Operation Burnout. Individuals affiliated with the Arizona Mexican Mafia setting up phone lines on the outside in abandoned properties. And they would basically be able to bounce the calls from jail and prison off those phones to cell phones anywhere on the street. And so they could communicate, basically avoiding high fees and oftentimes monitoring if it was one cell phone to another.
Would it be fair to say that some of the crimes that are committed are not just snatch and grab burglaries, but more sophisticated fraud schemes also by this organization?
Absolutely, as they are a more sophisticated criminal street gang.
Following, and you did some other investigations involving incarcerated and out of custody members of the Arizona Mexican Mafia, right?
Yes, a lot of them pertaining to communications.
What was your next duty assignment at the Phoenix Police Department?
Well, we did a lot of investigations while assigned to Arizona Department of Public Safety, but came back again and they placed us, our unit embedded us with the gang enforcement unit, and we continued to investigate crimes, usually in large groups and entities pertaining to the Mexican Mafia and all their affiliated criminal street gangs.
At some point, you retired from the Phoenix Police Department, is that right?
I did in 2016.
How many years did you serve as a law enforcement officer for the Phoenix Police Department?
Approximately 27 years.
And following that, you started in another law enforcement capacity, correct?
I went to work for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department in their Criminal Intelligence Division.
And in that capacity, did you monitor the communications of gang members to include Mexican Mafia members?
I did.
And did that include those who are incarcerated here in the jail system here in Maricopa County?
Yes.
Were you able to garner information about the Mexican Mafia in that role?
Yes, I was.
Let's now talk about what a criminal street gang is here in Arizona. I'm going to show, for demonstrative purposes, what has been marked as Exhibit 249. So my question to you, sir, is, are investigators in Arizona guided by what a criminal street gang is under the law?
They are.
So there's not a definition that you have and that Ellen Dahl may have and Tony Winter may have, correct?
It's a single definition as defined in ARS Title 13.
And I've got what is the exhibit on the Elmo for the record. Is that defined in Arizona Revised Statutes 13-1057?
Yes.
Is that what we are looking at here?
It is.
And so we can see here that that definition is what guides investigators. Does the Arizona Mexican Mafia fall under that definition?
Absolutely.
Well, what about the Cofelt Jets?
Yes, they do.
Are you familiar with the criminal street gang, the Cofelt Jets?
I am.
What is it?
The Cofelt Jets were basically originated out of a project in the area of 19th Avenue and Buckeye area. And that's why 19 is used as their designator. Many criminal street gangs use a numerical identifier to identify the neighborhood where they are active. Cofelt, in that case, is 19th Avenue.
And, well, there may be a definition for a criminal street gang. Is there also a definition for a criminal street gang member and how one becomes associated with that gang under the law?
Yes.
I'm going to show what's been marked as Exhibit 250 for demonstrative purposes. Are we looking at Arizona Revised Statute 13-1058?
Yes.
Is that the statute which guides the documentation for investigators regarding when someone falls into that category?
Yes, including 7 criteria that come below this initial part.
I'm putting Exhibit 251 up on the Elmo. Are we looking at those 7 criteria, sir?
We are, generically. I mean, they're not,
Well,
yes.
let's talk about the application of the law to what investigators do in investigations. Tell us what it means, based upon your training experience, the term self-proclamation as it relates to an individual who may be associating with a criminal street gang.
That's an individual admitting, making admissions that they are a member of a particular criminal street gang. I am a member of Mini Park, or observing written or listening to written communications and electronic communications where they're professing to be a particular member of a particular criminal street gang. So it's a self-admission category.
What about witness testimony or official statement?
So if you're involved in a criminal investigation and you're doing an official interview or interrogation, or it may be a court proceeding where a witness is testifying that an individual is a member under oath of a particular criminal street gang, could be transcripts from a court proceeding. All of those would be part of the witness testimony or official statement.
Written or electronic correspondence, how is that application practically used?
Well, taking the Arizona Mexican Mafia, they cannot survive without communications because their leadership is in prison. So they have to communicate out of custody. So the only way they can do that is through written and electronic communications, phone systems. And that would fall under that particular definition. Letters, a lot of times there's code involved, and the phone calls themselves.
We'll talk about all of that. Those are great. What about paraphernalia or photographs, sir?
Often when law enforcement does search warrants on criminal street gang cases, They may seize photographic evidence showing criminal street gangs together, members together, throwing up particular hand signs. They may seize not the photographs containing individuals dressed up in specific criminal street gang clothing. All of that would be considered paraphernalia or photographs.
Tattoos?
Tattoos, you have both specific to criminal street gangs, and you have tattoos that are used philosophically by criminal street gang members, and then you have political ink. And that ink is earned. You have to work for it. So in the case of Coffelt jets, you may have spelled out Coffelt, C-O-F-F-E-L-T, jets. You may have XIX for 19, or the numeral 19, indicating the neighborhood designator, that type of ink.
We'll talk more about tattoos. Clothing or colors, is that something that is as significant as it was back in the 80s and 90s?
Not so much. You still get clicks or sets that sort of apply them, associate with certain colors. Still, blue, Crips, red for Bloods or Piru. You get Hispanic criminal street gangs, not so much. More non-traditional criminal street gangs.
You may have a very unsophisticated criminal street gang member, for example, have psychos across their t-shirt for psychos Trace, but that's really someone who's not as sophisticated, correct?
Well, and that's more of a designator gang specific, the psychos Trace, and not the clothing color.
And this last, the seventh category, any other indicia of street gang membership?
And that's usually applied to ongoing associations. So even family members may obviously hang around with a family member who's a criminal street gang member, but that doesn't mean that they are. But when you see criminal street gang members from the same criminal street gang or same security threat group repeatedly associating together, that would be considered another indicia.
And security threat group is basically a civil term used in the Department of Corrections, correct, for a prison gang?
Yes.
But we're just talking about criminal street gangs, it's different terms.
They're all criminal street gangs.
I really want to talk to you about, we'll talk about the history of the Mexican Mafia in a minute, but it's important to understand the relationship of criminal street gangs generally to the criminal street gang, the Arizona Mexican Mafia. For example, Mini Park, criminal street gang, Coffelt Jets, criminal street gang, Southside Posse, criminal street gang, to the Arizona Mexican Mafia. What is the relationship of those groups to the umbrella of the Mexican Mafia?
So approximately 100 criminal street gangs feed into the Arizona Mexican Mafia. And members of the Arizona Mexican Mafia had previous affiliations and membership in criminal street gangs like Coffelt, Hollywood, West Side Chicanos, East Side 9th Street, Garfield. All of those criminal street gangs that had neighborhoods, their membership ended up doing time. It was very likely that they would be approached by the Arizona Mexican Mafia to put in work inside prison.
And in fairness, and we'll talk about it more, you don't necessarily have had to have been in jail or in prison to be a member of the Mexican Mafia, correct?
No, absolutely not by definition, no.
And there are criteria, but there's always exceptions to every rule, correct?
There are,
In every organization.
yes.
Tell us about what is the history of the Arizona Mexican Mafia?
Well, the Arizona Mexican Mafia in the mid-70s, Arizona was being influenced, the prison system, by membership of the California Mexican Mafia, which is referred to, identified as the Black Hand. And when individuals from California and the MA, the Mafia there, were incarcerated in Arizona, it created an influence on Arizona inmate population. So they copied. They wanted to do the same thing. They started a membership of the Arizona Mexican Mafia, and they had their own security group, internal security within the Mafia, and they started running specific prison yards in the state.
For those who don't have your background and experience, what does it mean to run a yard by inmates? I thought that
Control of contraband coming into the prison, control of drug sales, collecting rent. Individuals paid protection money to the Arizona Mexican Mafia just to exist without there being problems within prison. All of that were types of scams, tax scams and fraud. They would use other inmates' information to do tax returns, getting, again, an influx of money into illicit money, but that would come into the criminal organization.
would it be fair to say that it is control of the criminal underworld that they have control of? Criminal
Inside prison, yes,
and outside prisons in the criminal street gang world, correct?
eventually.
We started to use the term feeder in the history of the Mexican Mafia, feeder gangs. What does that mean?
Well, as I said, a lot of the members of the Arizona Mexican Mafia had previous criminal street gang affiliations to a neighborhood. And those neighborhoods became resources to the Arizona Mexican Mafia members who were locked up. They depended on, they utilized that membership and familial contacts on the streets to support them while in custody in prison.
And there are members who are not in custody or prison, right?
Yes,
And those who may be really good at making money or maybe really good at communications for the gang, correct?
correct.
And that's how they earn their way in, right?
Now it's mandated that you will spill blood, but yes, if you were really good at managing money, you would be an asset to Arizona Mexican Mafia. If you were extremely good at identifying drug sources and introducing those drugs into a facility, prison facility, you would be useful to the Arizona Mexican Mafia.
Could it be that there are just different ways to get in, although there are main ways, that are useful to that organization?
Yes.
Explain to us the hierarchy of the Arizona Mexican Mafia.
It's almost a military structure. They have, at one point they had two generals, basically one now. And then you have the captains under the general. You have lieutenants, sergeants, and then you have the warriors that make up the bulk population of the Arizona Mexican Mafia. You have a table or a mesa where lieutenants, captains sit and make the decisions for the group. And they also give their ideas for the code of conduct for the Arizona Mexican Mafia. They have a written code of conduct that their membership is to follow, mandatory.
Before we talk about the code of conduct, what's the point? What is the objective of this organization?
Money, control, fear. All of those things are important to the Arizona Mexican Mafia and them sort of putting their image out there so that people are aware and afraid of them.
Does that help them commit criminal acts?
Absolutely.
What is the code of conduct?
Well, the code of conduct is always shifting, always being added to, but basically it's rules that a member, prospective member, are to follow. And those rules include how they treat each other, what they have to do as far as membership. It has to do with sponsoring individuals and bringing them into the Mafia. and the responsibility of that sponsor if that prospect goes sideways and doesn't do what they're supposed to do. So it basically mandates how the mafia is to act to be more organized and be more efficient in control and bringing in money into the organization.
Is it important to the organization for a member to not be in custody?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because those are the people they depend on to do everything for those that are in custody. If you're in for a long time and you can't, don't have access to all the things on the street like the illegal drugs and the communications inside, you're not going to be very efficient. So they actually build networks and groups. They use tactics, the individuals inside, to develop a criminal support structure on the street so that they can survive.
Tell us about the importance of communication for this organization.
It's critical. They cannot, in fact, we always joked that the mafia would never be able to survive without all of the women that they pulled, that they told that they loved and they were going to marry and basically use them. And we tried to intervene as much as we could to save them, but it was just one of those things that they were very good at it. In fact, they have a reading list. They actually read materials that further that type of manipulation.
Are you suggesting that there is a recommended reading list with books, for example, like The Art of Seduction?
Absolutely, by Robert Greene, The 48 Laws of Power. All of those types of books teach mafia membership how to manipulate people, manipulate guards in prison, manipulate individuals out on the street to get what they want and support them.
What about the importance of instilling fear and intimidation in the community for those who witness criminal acts by Mexican mafia members or associates?
And it's twofold. It's not only the fear, intimidation when you're exposed to violence and when you're exposed to ongoing criminal activity, but it's also leverage. They want to have dirt on each other because it will make it much less likely for an individual to come forward and cooperate with law enforcement if they know the mafia has dirt on them as well.
What about documentation of violent acts witnessed by another Mexican mafia member? Why is that important to those who are involved in the mafia?
Because again, it's leverage. It's control. Everything about the Arizona Mexican mafia is fear-based, intimidation, extortion, and control based on historical criminal activity.
Have you been involved in investigations where individuals, there has been retaliation?
Yes.
The term snitching, is that a common term used in the Mexican mafia criminal street gang world?
Yes, it is.
What does that mean?
Basically, an individual, an informant, someone who is cooperating with law enforcement, and if they identify that individual and they can get to them, they will kill them.
Have you seen lists of cooperating witnesses that have been sent out or recovered during search warrants?
These lists, they're basically hit lists, and they do contain cooperating witnesses or snitches as they refer to, but they also include individuals that have been green-lighted or luz verde. They've been green-lighted to be killed by the mafia because of some other maybe violation of the code of conduct or some activity that is not approved by the mafia.
We talked about communication. Clearly, if communication is so important, they're not going to just write a letter and say, you need to kill this individual. Do they use covert techniques such as a language or codes?
Absolutely. They, a lot of the, culturally, a lot of the symbols that the Arizona Mexican Mafia utilize are from the Aztec or Mayan cultures, very warlike cultures. Some of the gods were specific to certain acts, violent acts within the cultures. So they've adopted many of the Mesoamerican symbols they identify with, which includes Nawa 13, the Nawa language, and the numerical language Nawa 13 for M in the alphabet.
Is Nawa an ancient language from Mexico?
It is, and it's still utilized in some regions in Mexico.
And is that a language that's been used in communication, both oral and written by members?
Yes, and numerical, as I said.
How could numerical, well, for example, what is a Nawa tracing?
It's 2 bars with 3 dots indicating the number 13. The 13th letter in the alphabet is M, so it's highly regarded by Arizona Mexican Mafia members. So if you're sporting, often you'll find prospects or tema sporting the Nawa Trece, or members sporting 2 of the Nawa Trece for MM, Mexican Mafia.
Well, what are some different ways that those involved in the mafia hide their communications or information from law enforcement or people who are not involved in that criminal underworld?
Yeah, they use all kinds of rotating code. You know, the 3rd letter on the 4th sentence, so that numerical type code. They use straight numerical systems often. They use micro writing, which is a technique where the writing is so small you can't really make it out with the human eye.
And we'll talk about it later, but in this case, there was a covert code that you used, or that you broke, correct?
Yes.
Talked about money. How does Arizona Mexican Mafia finance itself and its members?
Most of it comes from outside. They collect taxes, drug sales. If they have a neighborhood sewn up, they're in control of, 25% of the drug profits will go, or are supposed to go, to the Arizona Mexican Mafia. They're the ones controlling it. It may be rent from other yards, prison yards. Those individuals are basically paying the mafia to exist in peace. And that's, again, that comes back to the fear and everything that the mafia creates with inside. They are constantly coming up with scams to defraud. It's, like I mentioned earlier, tax returns, identity theft. It's just very typical information. If there's a way to make money illegally, the mafia will do it.
How does it help someone, a criminal street gang member out in the street, to have the affiliation or association of being a member or associate of the Arizona Mexican Mafia?
Respect. I mean, that individual, maybe he's esquina, just support, criminal support for the mafia. And his goals are to become a probate or tema and eventually a full member. That respect associated with his affiliation to the mafia can open a lot of doors on the street as far as both money and reputation.
Is it because, should there be an issue, he can always rely upon the organization to respond accordingly to ensure that that activity is followed through on, or that there's enough respect for that gang member?
Depending on the position and that individual's authority, absolutely.
What about for the mafia? For example, to have someone who's willing to commit violence by a Mexican mafia member, does that help the organization?
That actually perpetuates that violent reputation, and that makes it easier for them to do business when, who's gonna, who's gonna want to cooperate with law enforcement when they know that someone is capable of such extreme violence?
Committed an act of extreme violence in front of a mafia member, what would happen to the status of the one who committed that act within that world?
Oh, that's highly regarded. They, the mafia, the Arizona Mexican mafia looks at individuals that have that ability to commit violence and not even worry about it with high regard.
Role of tattoos. You talked about political ink earlier. Could I put on my body Mexican mafia, tattoo it on, and go into custody and be fine? Or a male, more importantly? Let's talk about a male doing it.
Yeah, if you were in custody and you had that type of ink on you and it wasn't earned or you weren't given permission to get it, you would have some serious problems.
Well, what do you mean by serious problems?
Well, they could fillet you, take the tattoo off. They could make you cover it up, or they could seriously injure you or kill you, depending on the situation.
Interactions with law enforcement, is it important to always give your real name when, as a criminal street gang member?
Important to give your real name?
Should they be giving their real name and cooperating with law enforcement?
No, the code of conduct absolutely mandates they won't cooperate with law enforcement.
And would giving a false name fall under that mandate?
That mandate and also a critical mandate to stay out of custody as well.
You've reviewed different documents related to the defendant, Ramon Bueno, correct?
I have.
And there's different ways to document someone's association or affiliation or membership as a criminal street gang member, right?
There are, but again, using the guidelines of ARS Title 13.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 252 for demonstrative purposes. What is GMIC?
Gang member identification criteria.
And are those the 7 criteria that are set forth in the law that are incorporated onto a standard document that law enforcement uses?
They are.
Is that a way to document? Will you tell us? How do you use those cards?
Field interrogation card to document, identify criteria for criminal street gang membership.
Did you review gimmick cards related to the defendant?
I did.
Did you review documentation going back to 2011 with the defendant meeting at least 2 of the 7 criteria related to the Mexican mafia and Mr. Bueno?
I did.
Were there several times that he was documented and it met at least 2 of the 7 criteria?
He did, and in fact, I identified 5 of the 7 criteria pertaining to Mr. Bueno.
And that was through multiple contacts?
Review of documents, review of gimmicks, review of photographs of Mr. Bueno.
Was there a review of correspondence?
Yes.
Was there a review of associations in different documentation?
Yes.
I'd like to talk about now Mr. Bueno's tattoos. I'm going to show you what's been admitted as exhibit number 190. You were part of the investigation based upon your expertise and role as a detective at the Phoenix Police Department, in this case, correct?
I was.
And you reviewed and interviewed multiple individuals related to the investigation?
I did.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 191. Is that a photograph taken on the day of the arrest of Mr. Bueno?
That is the front torso area of Mr. Bueno and arms.
Is there anything initially that stands out to you as a gang investigator that helps you to identify gang-related tattoos?
Yes.
Could you please tell us about that?
You see the brown pride, and it's in a top elevated position on the chest. That would be considered political ink. The Kofelt, that's the street gang affiliation, the Kofelt Jets.
Has Mr. Bueno in the past, prior to this date, been documented as a member of the Kofelt Jets?
Yes. You see Mr. Bueno's street name, nickname, Mono, on his right inner arm.
I'll put, I'll let you.
You see on his left bicep area, you see the steps to the pyramid, and you see the feathered serpent, which is very significant to the Arizona Mexican Mafia. Quetzalcoatl is a figure that was one of the gods or the deities worshipped by the Aztec culture.
Would this be considered political ink?
Yes. More so the brown pride, though. That's very important to the Mafia.
Is Kofelt very important also?
To the street, yes.
I'll show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 194. Is there anything significant about that, if you can see it?
No, I mean, there's some stuff that I can't make out, so, but nothing specific.
Exhibit 197 that's been admitted. Significant that he had Ariza, A-R-I-Z-A, around his right arm.
Yes, you can't see it entirely in this photograph, but Ariza is basically slang for Arizona. Mafia members have their Arizona patch, often AZ, often just the outline of the state, or Ariza in this case, and that would be considered political. You see Raza or race. There's a lot of pride for the Hispanic tradition within the Mafia, so they use and sometimes abuse the race card. Once you get inside prison, it becomes like the Aryan Brotherhood and the Peckerwoods and the skinheads for the whites, the Arizona Mexican Mafia, maybe Grandel for the Hispanics, Border Brothers, and then the Black Guerrilla family, the Mau Mau for the African-American groups within prison. See the XIX for 19, identifying, again, his affiliation with Kofelt Jets.
I'm going to put Exhibit 201 up. And we can start at the top. The skulls.
Brenner, may we approach?
You may.
Is there an importance to the headdress in terms of the Mexican Mafia?
Yes, the headdress and the figure as a whole is the god of war. And it's actually hummingbird feathers are depicted in the headdress. It is part of the warrior societal divide within the Aztec culture. and adopted by the Arizona Mexican Mafia.
The fact that there is west side on the back of his arms, is that important?
19th Avenue, it's obviously a western street, so a lot of the identifiers, criminal street gangs, they may use east side if it's on the street side of Central, or WS, or west side if it's on the avenue side.
And finally, the use of the Jaguar by those in the Aztec or Mexican Mafia culture, is that?
Again, extremely important. The two predominant societies within the Aztec culture were the Jaguar Warrior Society and the Eagle Warrior Society. And then with the gods and the hummingbird also intoned in those societies above them.
Judge, we will be moving to a different subject matter area. It might be a good place to break, if the court allowed it.
Okay. We're going to take our lunch break. Please remember the admonition applies during the lunch break. Do not discuss the case among yourselves or with any other parties. We'll see you back here at 1:30. Thank you. They leave the witness stand if you would like. Oh, wait, sir? Thank you. Now you may leave.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Counsel, is there anything more we need to discuss, or can we go off the record?
Not a mistake.
Okay, we'll see you after lunch.